Hi. Hi, Michelle. You're muted right now, so people can't hear you. How are you doing, Michelle?
I am fantastic. What's going well with you, Samson? Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being here with us. So this is Capital Races Club. Today's host is Samson Holmedes. Go to holmedes.com for more. And today we're gonna learn about communicating more effectively and efficiently at the same time with a rock star networker, Michelle Lee Myrter. Welcome, Michelle.
Oh,
Very,
thanks.
very pleased to have you here.
Thanks, Samson. I'm excited to be here.
For anybody in the comments, feel free to put your questions. Hey, Nick, we see you. And any questions during the show, feel free to put them in the chat. We read each comment, and if we have time in the end, we'll bring them up as well. So let's get started with what's your story, Michelle, and yeah, tell us a little bit more about you and who you are today.
Oh, well, I was in sales and marketing for, at this point, it's got to be almost 30 years. I didn't want to be in sales. I ended up there by accident, I guess. And I did okay with it, not great, didn't love it, right? There's a lot of people who don't like sales, it makes them uncomfortable. That was me. So, long story short, 2015, I lost my job, lost everything. I had to sell everything I owned. And because of the people I worked with, I started a company with nothing. And for anybody who's ever had to start over, I've started over numerous times. This was one of the worst ones. It took me 40 some years to get where I was. And to start over, I didn't have another 45 years to try to do it, to try to get even back to where I was or even close to it. So I was not getting paid. I was struggling. I was trying to build a company. And long story short, I ended up on a journey and met a woman named Sherry Tree, who created a system where she reverse engineered personality science. What I took away from her when I met her, she was at a conference, she blew me away, exponentially changed my business, my personal life, and the way that I look at sales, because sales can be fun. It doesn't have to be hard. And I was able to grow that company faster and made it more successful and built stronger relationships with everyone around me because of this system that I now train and coach people with.
Please tell me or tell us all about the system. It sounds like a fascinating way of getting to know one another. I've had the pleasure of receiving this. I mean, a little bit of a taste, and yeah, it's fascinating. Please let our audience know, how do you get to know a person when they first meet you?
Well, the thing is that people go into sales and they've been told one of the biggest lies that's ever existed, that sales is a numbers game, right? And that the more people you talk to, you got to hit something once in a while. Every blind squirrel gets a nut once in a while, right? So you have to talk to all these people, and they're going through these people and they have one presentation. Well, people are different. People need different information to process, and they have a filter based on their core values. Our system is reverse engineered personality science based on people's core values. All the other assessments are great and they're great tools, but the problem is that it doesn't matter if you're an introvert or an extrovert. When it comes to sales and building relationships, what drives that person? What makes that person say yes? So why do they buy is a more important question. And so the woman reverse engineered personality science and actually came up with the only methodology in the world that predicts buying behavior in less than 90 seconds. And it predicts why people make decisions and how they show up under stress, when they're happiest, what they avoid, all of the things you need to know when you're communicating with people. Sales and relationships are all based on people. That's the foundation of it. So if you take, it's called BANK. It's an acronym for the 4 personality types. You have your blueprint, blue for a reason. They're colder to approach. They need things like structure, stability, systems, plans, hate risk, right? They're organized, they're on time, they're inside the box. If you look at the next one, action, There's no box. They blew it up. There's rocket ships flying all over the place. They come at you like they just drank a Red Bull. They're going to high five you, fist pump you. They're like, yeah, what's up? People are taken back by them. Some of them, unless they're in action, right? So they need things like freedom, fun, excitement, opportunities. They're the ones who make decisions like that. They don't think about it. They just jump. They're like, oh, risk, I'll take it. The race car drivers, they're certainly not a blueprint, right? They're out there risking their lives every day, driving around in the car. A lot of things can happen. You have your nurturing. They recycled the box. They don't want to sell anything. They just want everybody to like them. They're about community, personal growth, significance, teamwork. They'll start a nonprofit. Your high action person would be like, a nonprofit? You're not making money? What do you mean? Right? So they look at things completely different. And then you have your knowledge. And your knowledge is looking at the other three codes and like, listen, without me, you wouldn't even have that box. I engineered it. They need the science and the research and the data. It's got to make sense. It's got to be logical. They look at self-mastery. Like Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was a blend. He was like an AK, right? Action, knowledge. Everybody has all four of those codes in them. It's just where they show up in what order that drives their decision-making, their behaviors, the way they show up. There's even a stress code. So when you look at that, you see all the different things that people need and the different information. So if you have one presentation or you don't know who your audience is, which everybody's going to tell you, know your audience, right? If you could dive deeper, imagine how much more business and how many more yeses you could get if you knew how to speak their language. The key is that, yeah, there's 4 different personality types. Those 4 different personality types can show up 24 different ways, which means that when people go out there, it's a 1 in 24 shot. There's a 4% shot not knowing their bank code to get that sale. If you know their full bank code, that increases to 75%. I see your face.
Yeah, I just said, whoa, I was muted. But, oh, that's quite a significant increase.
Correct.
Just by knowing each other's bank codes.
Right.
How do you start? Do you start with your own bank code and then others, or do you also, yeah?
Well,
how do you start?
You learn a lot about yourself when you find out what your code is, right? But the key is it's not about you. It's about the person sitting in front of you. You need to know what their code is, what information they need, what language they speak. How can you serve them better? You want to make an impact. You want to make a bigger impact. You want to have more influence in the world. Learn about people and how to better communicate and communicate effectively in any situation. And you'll be an ultra high performer.
Yeah. It's fascinating how I remember when we first met. This is part of when you go to michellelee.chat, you will see that that's built in to how you meet with people. So you already know how to, talk with them, and I filled it. And I remember after our conversation, we went deeper into how to communicate more efficiently and effectively. And you said AK for Bruce Lee? You said something else for me. Do you remember what it was?
You are an ANKB.
Yeah, surprising, right? Because how often does that happen?
Well, I mean, it depends. People attract their same bank code.
Yeah.
At least the first dominant one. 1 and 2 play a huge role of who you are, but that you attract those type of people. What's my bank code?
I'm gonna guess yours. I think you're AN. Can I say also KB? I would say that way. Yeah.
Yes, correct. Yep. And when we met, we hit it off right away, right? And that's what happens when your core values align with people. You have that same energy, right? You have the same ideas. You want to have fun. Like it was in the first few minutes, if you like someone or you don't. And it comes down to how they're wired. When you meet somebody who's colder, you get that like feeling like, I'm just not feeling this. I don't, they aren't showing any emotion. They aren't, but you have to have enough respect for the people sitting in front of you to take your lens off and say, okay, you know what? Your code is BKNA. All right, well, what does that mean? That means I need to tone myself down. I can't come at them like I just drank Red Bull. I can't be late. I can't come at them like I'm fly by the seat of my pants. They're looking for someone who's organized,
Yeah,
right?
that makes more sense.
Yeah. So blueprint and action, they're polar opposites. But when you line the codes up next to each other and you have somebody who's an AB or a BK, then all of a sudden the rules change. Now you have somebody who likes to make their own rules.
How do you usually do when you're communicating with somebody who's outside of your own bank codes? You said already that you have to communicate in their language, right? How do you
Correct.
position yourself in a way where you do that? Do you prepare in a different way? What are some tips and thoughts you would like to share with our listeners that would like to communicate more efficiently?
So one thing is be a really good listener, right? And pay attention to what that person's saying. And don't assume that they're just like you. But to be really good at communication and understanding people, I've gone through an enormous amount of coaching and training to master the skills of knowing who's in front of me, even if I don't crack their code, or even if I use our little tools and I crack their code on LinkedIn, because we have this really cool tool, you can do that too. Sometimes that might be wrong. And then I'm meeting with them and I have to know where they are. I have to know, wait a second. That doesn't sound like a blueprint. No, nope, I'm not seeing that code, right? But people can flow between those different codes depending on the situation or what they need. I've gone into sales into a presentation where I wanted to buy something. I'm an action. I don't think about it. If I want it, I'm going to get it, right? And I've gone in and I'm like, yes, I want this. I need this. I know I need it. And they talked me out of it.
Yeah,
They talked me out of it. And that happens a lot.
yeah. It's interesting that I've had that happen to myself too. How would you say that somebody can get more confident? You said also in LinkedIn, wait, let's cover that first. Is how you're presenting yourself sometimes. You said it's different from how you appear on the meetings. So what could be the reasons for that?
Well, so we have this tool that you can actually go onto LinkedIn and you can decode people's profiles. It's going to take their work history, their education, and their about section.
Yeah.
Why can that be wrong? Well, some people are accountants and they don't want to be accountants. They're actually working in their stress code, right? So their profile may show up differently. Some people don't write their about sections. They have someone else do it. Some people have to follow certain guidelines and those things have to be in their about sections. So how do you determine if that's person if that LinkedIn code is their own? Best way, have them crack their own code. Takes the guessing out. The other way is look at posts they wrote. There's all different ways you can examine things, study things, do your analysis on, okay, who is this person? What's important to them? And there's tons of ways to find that out. But when you write your profile, that's how people see you. In your post, in your LinkedIn post, your Facebook post, all your social media, you are showing up a certain way based on your communication. Some people write in their stress code, which means they're attracting the opposite code, right? They're not attracting their main code. So then they can have like a conflict. And it's interesting to see how people are showing up based on their social media. And then you can see, oh, well, now I know why you're having struggles trying to close deals because you're attracting a completely different type of person than you are. And you don't know that. So you're coming across assuming they're just like you. So there's all different ways that you can crack a code. Like I said, best way, have them do it themselves. There's, but learning and mastering the skills so you can meet them where they are. If you think of the codes as different languages, then you're fluidly learning how to speak all of those different languages. It comes down to your tone, what kind of clothes you wear, what your background looks like. All of those things are clues.
Yeah. How do you said different languages. So you mean an action and a knowledge does not speaking the same language?
Oh, no, no, not at all. Not even close. No. And think of it this way. If you go into you have an audience in front of you, or let's put it this way. If you go to a foreign country, are you going to expect everybody to adapt to you? Or are you going to learn the language of the people?
I think that depends on the kind of tourist you are, but for me, I speak 5+ languages, so yeah, I learn
Exactly.
languages where I go.
Okay. So your action, they need things quick and to the point. Don't give
Yeah.
them all the details. Higher knowledge, they need all the details. They need all the information. They don't want to be wrong. They have to make their own decisions.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be one that's going to jump at a deal. They're not going to be like, oh yeah, this is what I want right now. They need to do their own research. They let them be. They don't want to be sold to. We always say,
Yeah.
how long does it take to close a K? It starts with 4. Forever.
4. Okay. All right. And how about wait, we have a question actually from Nick Aguirre in the audience. We can bring it up here in between. Anybody else who's watching this live right now, feel free to participate and engage. That way we can bring up your questions and your input. So Nick Aguirre asks, is there a list of words, predicates that are more common among each code? I'm curious to know specifically which language goes into it.
Yes, yes, there are. And that's in our training. We go into the language, the likes, the dislikes, what's going to turn one code off, turn another code on. Yes, so yes, there is different words. One of the words a higher K would use would be fascinating or interesting.
That's interesting because I say fascinating way too much.
And that's your stress code. You can
Yeah.
actually get a further assessment that will tell you how high you are in each of those codes. So some people are high in several of them. Some people are high in all 4 and they flow through them really easy. Some people are really high in one code and really low in the others. And you can tell the difference. It's kind of like speaking different languages.
That's interesting. And I almost said fascinating, but okay. Let's go with so when you started learning about different languages, all of these things, how did that help you and people that you worked with their just closing rates and businesses?
Oh my gosh. Well, let me tell you about a 150,000 deal that I let slip through my hands in the matter of minutes. So,
Oh,
yes, yes. And this was prior to knowing bank. And the lady came in and I had to sit with her for 2 days. And I blew it right out of the gate. I didn't speak her language. I was trying to make small talk. Me and my partner were showing pictures of our dogs. We had bagels and donuts and all the fun stuff, right? She hated us. It was the worst 2 days. And of course, when you blow a deal, it doesn't matter how big or small it is, you leave and you're like, it was their fault. They're a
yeah.
jerk, right? It was like, they're terrible. I can't believe she was like that. Well, shortly after, I started my bank training, and all of a sudden, all the light bulbs went off. And I said, oh, wow, I really messed that up. It wasn't her. It was me. I assumed she was just like me, and I blew it. I was able to go back. I was able to get the deal, land the deal. It's worth over $250,000 now. But it was a hard lesson to learn, especially at that time. I wasn't getting paid. So I needed every deal I could get, whether it was $10, $150,000, didn't matter.
That's insane. And when you started to learn about bank and how to talk in other people's languages, mainly from the prospects or from the client's side, how did that change your process of closing deals and talking with people?
It changed everything. It changed the way I went into the sales process. It changed the way I literally communicated with my own family. It saved my relationship with my oldest child because we were completely opposite. For 18 years, I did it wrong. People who are going through the course are coming back saying it saved my marriage. It took my business and increased my sales up to 300%. There's one person who used it in their Airbnb business. They literally bankified their houses. In the beginning of the pandemic, they were like top 10, top 5, something like that, in their state in Arizona. So they literally exponentially changed their business. I believe their income that year, they made $51,000 just by using bank. And that was, like I said, in the middle of a pandemic when people weren't traveling.
That's insane increase. And also for yourself, 300%.
Yeah.
That's just massive.
There was another woman, she actually went 30 days without getting a no. 30 days, not one no.
So
Could
this
you
is
imagine?
applicable. Yeah, this is applicable in all businesses, or is it mainly in sales? Could it be
This,
in investing? In
this is applicable in life, in every aspects of life. Everything comes down to people and how you communicate with them, increasing your emotional intelligence, and being able to speak their language.
yeah, we have Nick Aguirre again sharing that. I get the feeling that the question he just asked was a blueprint question, process oriented.
Yes, Nick, process-oriented blueprint. Very good.
I'm very
It's
excited.
yes, and Nick, to answer your question, well, to help you on that, the entire system, it's a whole system. So it gives people all the tools, the entire system that they need in a blueprint style as well, because it's bankified, so it covers all the codes, so that it's easy for people to understand and put into their process.
I remember one of the things before we met, or during our meeting, was that you shared with me how my profile on LinkedIn and how that looks, and then that I'm speaking in more of this language than the other. Could you go in deeper on how you can bankify not just your online presence, but your meetings or yourself in a way where you're speaking to a larger audience and they hear what, they perceive as their language? I don't know if that sounds manipulative in any way, but for me, it was just, whoa, this is magical.
And it's not manipulating. You're being your authentic self. You're just speaking the language of the people in front of you. If you don't know your audience, you want to cover all 4 codes. You want to make sure that you've covered everybody's language so that everyone hears you. So everyone hears your message and they understand what you're saying.
If this is sort of like earlier when you said that you're ready to take action and the salesperson just talked you out of it. So
Right.
you definitely want to be aware of how to speak with more people that way. So certain
Absolutely.
ones.
And on social media, when people are putting posts out there, it's speaking to a certain audience. Unless they're reaching all 4 codes, they're leaving sales on the table and they have to reach them equally, right? Um, unless they have a specific audience that they're going for, in which case you could use artificial intelligence to determine that too. But from real estate listings to social media to your website to your emails, how you're communicating, every aspect, all that, I run everything through my AI.
Beautiful. How would you how would you communicate more with investment minded? I don't know if that's even a word, or how would you communicate for real estate investors in general?
It depends on their code. They could be any of the 24 different positions they could be, right?
Yeah.
So you need to personalize it. You need to know who they are, and then you'll know how to talk to them.
That's I was hoping for something like that, because then it becomes on you and you take ownership for how you speak and communicate. And that
Absolutely.
is the key here. You can learn and you can become better. How did you learn this? How long did it take for you?
Well, I mean, people learn all in different ways and at their own pace, right? In order to master a skill, you need like 10,000 hours. But it's wash, rinse, repeat. It's one of those things. As soon as you start doing it, as soon as you start pouring into bank, it becomes part of you. So it's not like something you have to turn off or turn on. You just have to be aware and then implement it, right? It just, you start decoding everything. Like I'm decoding, my dogs, they have bank codes, believe it or not, like TV shows. I'll go to the grocery store and I'll be like, oh yeah, I know that. I see it. Right.
So your dog speaks in which language? I think that's going to be a question for later.
I have two different dogs. They got two different bank codes.
Okay, that's fascinating. Yeah. I was about to say fascinating again. I would like to take a short break to promote our sponsor for today's event. Today's sponsor is sponsored by gobnetwork.com. It's a community for active and passive investors, and you can check it out on gobnetwork.com. All right, back to the show. So, more questions about how do you now apply this when you're communicating on social media, for example. We're right now live on YouTube, we're live on LinkedIn, we're live on Facebook. Would you say that these communication platforms are different bank codes, or are they, all of them are have some parts of which, or would you say that it's different, your message, depending on
So,
what platform?
well, no, so all the platforms have a variety of all the codes. Typically with your Instagram and Facebook, they're going to be a lot of higher action people, right?
Right.
Well, because Instagram is fast. It's a scrolling, like, not like, it's a lot of pictures. Your LinkedIn is going to be more B's and K's. You are going to have a blend of all the different codes, but it's more business oriented. There's learning there, right? So when you look at the different Facebook, a lot of personal stuff, more emotional, nurtures and actions, Facebook, Instagram. You'll find them all over, but that's typically, there's a larger amount of nurturing and action in the Facebook, Instagram space than in the LinkedIn space.
I think that is the best marketing strategy that I've ever heard. You just spoke to so many people that, hey, this is I want to rewind that, but okay, let's
Well,
move.
I mean,
we can always go in.
and the
Okay.
action and nurturing people are in LinkedIn. It's not that they're not there. They're the ones who they do a lot of posting. They show up a lot. They do a lot of liking and commenting, right? They're there because they know that's where the business is. So your action people, they know that's where they can get a lot of business. They can do a lot of business. They can build their network, build their connections. Does that make sense?
It definitely does. So you have nurturers who are supporting more, and you have action takers that actually do the post, and then you have the B and the Ks that hire out for both of them.
Well, and they kind of sit back and watch, right? They're sitting back and watching all of the posting, and they're
That
more
explains a lot, because we sometimes have in Capital Races Club too. We have in our comment section here, we have somebody who's not following the page. They're not necessarily commenting either, but all of a sudden they're in our email list and they're very grateful for the information, and they even, support us in other ways, which is for me baffling, because whoa, I didn't even know you were there. I couldn't see
right,
you.
right.
So comment when you have a comment. If you're an action and nurture, even if you're not, if you're BK or anything else, put in the comments so that we can help you out with your
Right.
questions.
And you got to remember too, again, you got to look at that full code. If that nurturing's higher in the code and they're a NK or a KN, it's gonna change how they show up because they want that community. They have that nurturing high. And I know that's kind of confusing when you go into like the whole array of them. I usually stick to the first dominant codes, but sometimes people go, oh, well, I'm good with people, right? Well, you're just guessing. You might as well throw spaghetti noodles at the wall. And if you are an ultra high performer, what would it look like to increase your sales even 10%? What if you could do better than you're doing? People can always do better, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Always learning. We have Nick here who's learning more about. He's asking, this discussion is centered a lot around language. What are the nonverbal indicators of bank codes?
So there's a lot of them. One, your action is more animated, right? They're all like you're nurturing, they're huggers. They have a softer tone. They're like sometimes they wear bright colors, flowers. Think of rainbows, sunshine, right? Your knowledge and your blueprint are colder. They don't have that high energy, that high emotion. So they're going to be, your blueprints is strictly to the business. Like, let's get to business. We have a system, we have a schedule. Let's follow it.
Makes sense.
And go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, when you're also learning about bank codes, do you learn the nonverbal too? Like how to decipher body language and all that? Because that I hear. Could you please share for our listeners the percentages of verbal communication, the actual words, and the audio and the body language, how that ratio is?
Yeah. So the verbal is in the, I think it's in the 80 some percent range for the nonverbal.
The non, yeah, I mean accumulated because it's 55% for the body language, 38% for the tonality of your voice when you're talking, and then 7% for your words. So your words really don't. That's why people say like it's your actions and how you're saying it is more important than what you're saying. But it's also important what you're saying, of course. You can't take it back.
So if you look at, so say a higher action person, if you look at them compared to the other three, if you come across in that high energy, right, and you're talking real fast and you're just like real animated, your nurturing person could be like, wow, they're really aggressive. And they could be turned off because they're so over the top. Your blueprint looks at it and they're like, wow, they're a loose cannon. They're really risky. And your knowledge, they need the details. They don't want all that animation and emotion coming at them, right? They're looking for the information. Just give me the information. Let me go on my own, and I'll come back to you after I do my due diligence.
It's fascinating because in commercial real estate, Capital Raisers Club is mainly for active and passive investors, and we talk with a lot of brokers, a lot of investors, and a lot of the time, I notice there's a disconnect. I'm part of groups we discuss. Some people are very very focused on that knowledge, and what was the B again?
Blueprint, the system processes.
Exactly, which is my lower, I would say. And meanwhile, me, very, very action and nurture oriented. So for me, it's easier with the other things. And I've noticed that there are all of these parts going on in the business, and there's a disconnect between us. And I think it would be very, very highly valuable for more people to take the time to actually learn how to communicate with each other, especially because it's so, I mean, we're dealing in millions, sometimes hundreds of millions. So it's very important to not miscommunicate what you're dealing with. So.
Absolutely. And think of it like, have you ever been on a Zoom call or been in a conference where all of a sudden, like, you just zone out? You aren't even paying attention to what they're saying. You're like, right? That's what happens. That's what happens when people aren't speaking your language. It's you just filter them out. I see it on Zoom calls all the time. We'll be on networking, and you'll see people doing their commercials or whatever it is, and people are like looking at their phone or whatever, and somebody will say something, and they'll pique that action's interest, and they're like, "Oh, what'd they say? What opportunity? What was that? What are you gonna do for me?" And you can see the different codes just showing up on those calls, and it's super interesting.
Yeah, that was yeah. Let's not go there because okay. How would you say that this applies in, you said relationships at home too? How do you
Absolutely.
say that this applies in relationships? I mean, work is work, but how does it apply at home?
So, like I was telling you about my oldest child, 18 years, I did it wrong. As soon as I started listening to the trainings and everything, I was like, oh, wow, I missed it. I knew everything about them. I spent all my time with them and I missed it. So, here's an example. I'm packing for a trip. Pack in the morning of. I am a half an hour late. I think nothing of it. They're packed a week in advance, waiting at the door for a half an hour. And they're angry with me before we even leave the house. I chalk it up to they're tired, they don't want to go, we have a miserable vacation because there's no plan, there's no system, there's nothing. To them and their core values, I lied to them. Last thing I ever wanted to do was lie to my kids, but there it was right there in front of me. I lied to them. I said we were leaving at 9 o'clock. It was 9:30. We hadn't left the house. I was stressing them out. I didn't even know it. We would go to the toy store. I'd be riding around on a little bicycle, shooting hoops, pushing all the buttons for the automated toys, right? My youngest was loving it, thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. My oldest was in tears. Chalk it up to they're tired, they're cranky, they're hungry, who knows? And out of the toy store we would go. What did I do? Their core values, they're a BKNA. Their core values, I literally blew every one of them when we walked into the toy store. I didn't follow the rules. There was no plan. There was no system. There was risk they were going to get in trouble. So I blew it every day by showing up assuming that they were just like me. And they wanted that mom who was fun. And then there would be that miscommunication where I would come home and say, "Oh my gosh, let's go on a trip tonight. We're going to pack, we're going to go, we're going to have fun." And they would be upset and angry, and we'd get into a fight because I thought they didn't want to hang out with me. They didn't like me. And it was that they needed time to plan for it. They didn't like surprises and being thrown a curveball because they had a system and a plan and they had everything together until I disrupted their whole life.
So you would say that you have to talk differently with both, or what is the what how do you deal with it now?
Correct. So the way that we have conversations now is I have to plan out what I'm going to say. I have to, if I want to spend time with them, I have to give them notice. I have to let them know in advance, hey, you want to go have lunch next week? And give them a time and let them know. I have to, their second code is K. I have to give them all of the information. So we got a water system. I thought the water system was so cool. I'm doing all these little tests. I'm like, this is awesome, right? One is an AKBN. He came down. I was like, check out this stuff. I'm doing this test. And he was like, I know what it does. Of course he does. He knows everything. The other one comes down, BK. Well, blueprints are skeptical. So what did they do? They're on their phone. And I'm like, what are they doing? They were looking up to see if it was certified. And if it was certified, who certified it? And if they were for real. Okay, we're building Legos. One is following the instructions step by step. The other one is building like a machine. Nobody can stop him. He's in a competition with himself. I go and grab a wheel to put a piece of rubber on it because I'm like, oh, yeah, I got to do something. I'm sitting here. I'm bored to death. And the blueprint knowledge goes, what are you doing? I stopped. The old me would have been like, what do you mean? What difference does it make? It's just it's not going to affect anything. But now I know. So I said, oh, I'm sorry, you're right. It's not time for that yet. And I put it down and I waited.
That just sounds, I mean, now you understand, or at least both of you have way better communicating between you.
Exactly. And then they know how I show up. So now they're
Yeah.
not offended because they understand that, hey, like I was supposed to go to dinner with my brother and it kept getting pushed off and pushed off. And like it was the last minute and they were like, are you going or not? I said, I don't know. Nobody's even gotten back to me. And I was irritated. They go, wow, if you're irritated, it must be bad. Because they know wait till the last minute for everything. But this was really, really pushing my buttons.
You said also earlier about when packing and planning trips, how different it is for you when you're going, you're ready to go. It's in your mind, you're already ready, even though you pack maybe last minute. Um, maybe that could be something that also applies to not just in the house, but with business, where you get prepared for an event or a meeting. You understand that, hey, this meeting is happening in your brain already. You've already gone through it several times. Meanwhile, somebody else needs, the whole script and everything. This is live right now. It's not scripted. You can ask a question all of a sudden. Michelle is answering a question that's just, she's able to do that. So how would you say that? I mean, I don't know if I answer my own question here, but how would you say that applies when you're talking about business too, where
Oh,
planning and preparation can be done very differently in company?
all of them do it differently. Every code. So your action, I don't plan anything. I never script anything. I do presentations. I'm doing a training Saturday. It's not scripted. It's not practiced. I don't practice anything. I just do it. I just jump into action and do it. Your higher knowledge, they need to practice. They need to make sure they're the expert. They need to do it over and over and over again. Sometimes they never jump into action. Right? So blueprints, they have a whole system, a plan, everything's laid out. They know what they're doing. And they have it start at a certain time and end at a certain time. Right? Your action, I mean, they don't care when it starts, when it's over. They really don't have any concept of time. But so it just depends. Each code is completely different. And knowing how they're blended and that full code really makes a huge difference. When you're looking at, so for instance, real estate, going to look at a house, I'm completely opposite than my boyfriend. We're two completely different codes. I don't care how much it costs. If I want it, I want to buy it. Well, he's higher blueprint. So he doesn't just buy things on a whim. Like he's got to make an offer. He's got to know he's getting a good deal. And so it causes an issue for our real estate person. Because now how's she supposed to deal with these two completely different personalities? It can be a real challenge.
Hi.
Hi.
As you can notice, this is live, so we had a little bit of technical. So it's very different when you're communicating with the agent and when he's communicating. How do you solve that now that excuse me, when you know about bank and how to apply it in his language and maybe also in her language? How do you deal with that?
You have to present it to both of those codes differently. And you have to compromise and make some type of adjustments to say, okay, well, here's what we can do, right? But knowing where they're coming from, one of the real estate agents, we have tons of real estate agents that are trainers. They actually got into the training part of it. And one of them had a high knowledge person that they were meeting with, and they knew that. So what did they do? They had a whole binder of all of the information about the house, the area, all the charts, all the things. And they presented that book to them. And they were like, "Oh, do you need this back?" And they said, "No, it's for you. Take it back. If you have any questions, let me know." No pressure, no anything, right? Well, the person loved them. They picked that one. They had other real estate agents they could have chosen, but they chose her because she understood what they needed and gave them the information, and it was a no-brainer.
That's one
Somebody
sounds
was,
like in the studio we have a little bit of double. All right, now it's better. So we have a question. We're gonna take that question real soon. I would like to deep a little bit or go a little bit deeper on that situation. So you're preparing with a binder, you're giving it away, and the K personality or B personality will really appreciate that, even though you're presenting it for them so that they can, appreciate it while you also talk in that tone with them, like a B or
absolutely.
a K.
Absolutely. You're not going to come with a high energy and be like, "Here's a book for you," right? I did my research. Here's the information about the house, the area. If you have any questions, let me know. Where if somebody gave me a binder with all that information, I'd be like, I'd chuck it. I don't want all the information.
Maybe you give it to somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. But it would turn me off. I wouldn't prior to this. Obviously now I understand people and why they do the things they do. But prior to that, I'd be like, I don't really want to work with this person. That's not what I need. Like, sell me the bells, sell me the whistles, be quick. Those are the types of things that appeal to me.
Yeah, and also sounds like a great way to find partnerships by communicating with them clearly, right? So,
Absolutely. I mean, whether you're finding partnerships, whether you're hiring people, whether you're in a relationship, knowing how that person's wired gives you the ability to understand them and communicate so they understand you. It's not their job to figure out what you're saying. It's your job to communicate in a way that they understand.
yeah, makes sense. Hey, we have a question from must be one of the employees at Capital Races Club. That's super cool. What would you say, Michelle, is a great strength to have to be great in sales?
So I get this question a lot, and people asked if sales is an art or a science. Sales is an art only if you know the science. Any code can be great at sales. Every code is special, and they all have their own strengths. Having the ability to tap in to the different codes and tap into your weaknesses and improve them, anybody can be great in sales. Now, if you look at people who are ultra high performers, typically have an A somewhere up front because they're in action. They're jumping into action. You can look at the strengths and the weaknesses of people, and you can actually see what's holding them back. If someone's A is in the third or fourth position, they tend to hold back and not jump into action as fast. It holds them back because they got to go through those other codes to get there, right? Did that help, and did that answer your question?
I think our employee is very happy right now. Yeah, she is. All right, so we have a question from Cecilia Holmeres asking if you could give one advice on how to be great at communicating with your relationships. What would that be? One word of advice to communicate clearly in relationships and settings.
So what relationships, opposites attract and they also attack. So you need to understand that you're different and you have different things that you need. Typically a nurturing and a knowledge, sometimes they attract, right? Complete opposites. And at first, a knowledge is looking at the nurturer saying, You're so kind. You have so many friends. You take care of things. And the nurturer is looking at the knowledge saying, you're so smart. And after a while, those two codes collide. And now the nurturing person who needs love and emotions isn't getting it. Because they're like, why don't you touch me? Why don't you tell me you love me? That's what they're looking for. Knowledge tend to not like emotions because it clouds logic, right? So they're like, why are you so needy? Why do you want to touch me all the time? You talk too much. So you have to know the differences that how you show up and understand that people are different and they need different things. So what can you do to help that person? Like if you know, knowing the knowledge doesn't like emotions, but likes to do other things that you could do together so you could still do things together. Like maybe they want to read a book or go to a museum or you can compromise. So finding those likes and dislikes and what people need, and then really looking at it from a different angle, listening from different ears and saying, okay, well, this isn't what I need or what I would want, but this person would. So an example of the, even like gift giving, a high knowledge gave my friend who's a high nurturing a pair of insoles for Valentine's Day. Insoles. The nurturing said, where are my flowers and chocolates? He said, flowers die and chocolates will make you fat. Yeah, right? Okay, so obviously she was a little torn up about it. But when she found out why this high knowledge person gave her insoles, then all of a sudden it was different. The reason why is because he did all his research. She had a problem with her back, and these were the best insoles that would solve the back problem.
That's beautiful. I mean, sounds like you care a lot, or they care a lot. I don't
Right.
know.
So don't assume that somebody is doing something because they don't care. All the different codes care in different ways. I love to get expensive gifts. My boyfriend, Higher Blueprint, he doesn't like expensive gifts. He likes a budget. So I bought him a garage, an actual garage that I had shipped to New York as a surprise. Didn't tell him. Obviously, he had to plan, like build a platform, get gravel, do all of the things. I told him the day before. Wasn't the best reaction. Not what I was looking for.
Was that before bank?
Yes. Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
There's before
Much
and after
before.
learning communication here. That's how big of a difference it is, learning. Hey, before we go into closing, I would like to ask, first of all, let's ask this before. What's one thing that you would like to share with our audience today that they could, take action on, and this will,
So first, a couple of things. Don't judge people based on how they show up. Have enough respect to understand that they're different for a reason and they show up differently. Be a good listener and pay attention to what they need. The world would be a better place if we could all increase our emotional intelligence, stop judging and start loving on people for who they are, meet them where they are, and realize that everybody's not like us, right?
that's a beautiful ending to a great conversation. And Cecilia is saying here in the comments, thanks for your advice. This is really valuable. You mentioned many things that I haven't thought about before.
Oh,
And
thank you, Cecilia.
I think she's one of many in the audience right now. She's also one of the people who are commenting, so we get to see her reactions and her input here. Next time, feel free to add the questions in the recording. The recording is up later, and you can comment there afterwards. If you'd like to show up for the next Capital Racers Club, it's on Tuesdays and Thursdays live at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, Central. is 1 p.m. Pacific time. It's 11 a.m. So yeah, that's the way you can find this. How can we find you, Michelle?
MichelleLee.chat. They can book a complimentary 30-minute session and find out how they're communicating and how they can improve. And also, Samson, is there anything that you have going on that we can help support you with, or I can help support you with?
Absolutely. So capitalracesclub.com is where you can support this channel, and holmeros.com if you want to support me and my wife's journey around the world. It's a little bit different than Capital Races Club, but yeah, we travel a lot. We share about the experiences that we've learned in so many countries right now. So okay.
Fantastic.
And thank you. You're the first person to ask that. Holy cow.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I love watching your journey, on you and your wife's journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle. And I'm looking forward. I mean, this is a topic that I think is it's not one of the, I think this is the most important topic when it comes to doing business or relationships, like communicating clearly. So I'm looking forward to, in the future, having you back here, educating more of our audience on how to communicate clearer in the other person's perspective, because I know I can do a lot better. I am right now not communicating with bank in mind at all times. So I have a lot to learn still, and I'm very grateful, Michelle, that we get to learn from you today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. So in closing, I'm gonna remove both of us here. In closing, today's episode is sponsored by gobnetwork.com. You can join the community of active and passive investors by going to gobnetwork.com and look up when the meetups are happening. They may be in your city, some are live, some are on Zoom. Lots of great conversations and a great community to join for active and passive investors in commercial real estate or real estate. So with that said, thank you so much for enjoying this episode today, and see you on Tuesday next time for an interview on Thursday next week. So talk to you soon. Take care.